Over 2 decades of sports radio dominance in Utah.
My favorite.
This is DJ and PK, presented by Black Desert Resort, Utah's premier golf resort, on 97.5, the KSL Sports Zone.
DJ and PK, it is time to welcome in Bo Smolka, Ravens beat writer for Press Box. He is here to talk about the AFC North. Bo, good morning.
Good morning. How are you?
Doing well, doing well. You're ready to take the plunge? Here goes the NFL. Not that it ever really stops, right? But here comes camp and here come games.
That's right. For Ravens' first practice is in about 3 hours, so there's kind of this vibe, that the players are back. We talked to a couple of them yesterday, and there's definitely excitement. It's kind of, it starts over again. You're right. It never really ends. They were here a month ago for minicamp, and they were here before that for OTAs, and the NFL has become this kind of 12-month monster. But there's definitely a different feel when training camp starts, and it's really, really here. And so they're excited. And look, this team has high expectations. They feel they have one of the best rosters in the league, and I think they're right. The biggest problem with the Ravens has been they've messed up in the biggest moments, and that's just, they can't run from that. And that's something that they will have to own and until they get back to the playoffs and try it again.
Is there any common thread through the playoff defeats, and they're 3-5 in the playoffs in the Lamar Jackson era here? Is there any common thread that ties them together where you can say it's this or it's these two things maybe? Or has it been they've lost 5 different games for 5 different reasons?
I mean, overall, they've made mistakes. And, the one year Lamar Jackson didn't play, he was hurt, and they fumbled at the 2-yard line when Tyler Huntley was trying to score on a quarterback sneak, and Cincinnati returned it for a touchdown to win that game. They had 3 turnovers in the game last year against Buffalo, not even counting the drop 2-point conversion play. Overall, they've just made mistakes. Now, a lot of people here argue or are still upset about the AFC Championship game here against Kansas City a couple of years ago when they had the number 1 running team in the league, and in the second half of that game, they basically abandoned the run completely. And there's a feeling that the offense just kind of panicked when they fell behind. But overall, I would say they've just made bad turnovers at bad times, and it's a team that historically over those seasons did not turn the ball over, but they got to the playoffs and they did. And I know John Harbaugh has talked about this year they're trying to create all this new internal evaluations, practice to practice, to grade things like ball security and just get, don't try to fiddle and it's all the goal to emphasize not making these mistakes. But you can do that all you want. The question is, does it happen in the big moments? Because during the year it hadn't. But then again, Mark Andrews is a sure-handed guy, and then he gets the ball poked out of his hand in the fourth quarter at Buffalo when they're driving. Lamar Jackson picks up a loose ball. He tries to make something happen, and he fumbles the ball away. And Lamar Jackson has done that before, where he's picked up a loose ball, tried to make something happen, and turned into a wizard. So it's that part of it is who he is. But it's been frustrating for this team because they feel like they're there, and then at the biggest moments they've made mistakes.
There are a ton of good rivalries in that division, and I think that everyone kind of stares each other down and tries to make moves to compensate for what other teams in that division are doing. Do the Ravens have the best offense in the league, and does everyone else have to focus on defense because of it?
That's a great question. Their offense is really good, and again, adding Derrick Henry last year added a completely different element to this offense. It was a pretty good offense before that. I know for years the Ravens feel like they haven't, or fans feel like the Ravens haven't produced at wide receiver the way they should. But Zay Flowers is emerging as a really good player. Rashad Bateman is turning into a really good player, and they've got 2 great tight ends in Mark Andrews and Isaiah Likely. Now you add Derrick Henry to that mix, and what that did last year was it really frustrated defenses because the way the Ravens run these RPO games with Lamar Jackson, you don't know if Lamar Jackson has the ball or if he's handed it to Henry. And if a defensive player hesitates for just half a second, that might be too late. And now Henry is running for 60 yards because he's so big and he's so fast. And if he'll outrun little defensive backs. We saw him do it against Buffalo in the regular season last year. So it's a really tough offense to defend. I mean, the best offense in the division, it might be. I know the Bengals have a firepower on offense, and they torched the Ravens last year with that Joe Burrow-led offense. But collectively, between the wide receivers, the tight ends, the running back, the quarterback, and the offensive line, which returns 4 starters, I'd be hard-pressed to say the Ravens have the best. I think the Ravens do have the best offense. Do teams compensate for that by building their defense around it? That's possible. I know the Ravens have, in the past couple of years, after getting burned by the Bengals, have really emphasized their pass defense and their coverage. So there's no question that these teams know each other well and that they try to build their rosters to counteract what the other teams they're going to see twice a year, because the first step you got to do is make the playoffs, and you make the playoffs easiest by winning your division. And it is a great division. The games are absolute battles. But I do think the Ravens probably have the best overall offense when you factor in, all 11 positions on offense.
Now, you mentioned Cincinnati. Can you explain to me what they're doing? Okay, they got a great quarterback, and they got 2 great wide receivers, and they signed them. But you got to play a little defense. They're in the bottom quarter of the league, and it doesn't make any sense to me.
I mean, that's the question, right? And that's why I think the Ravens have probably the best full roster in the division, because they do have a strong defense too. And the Ravens last year, they got after the Bengals defense as well. They scored on them, but the problem was it was early in the season and the Ravens got lit up by Joe Burrow, and that was another thing entirely. But no, I mean, I think that's the question with the Bengals is their defense going to be good enough? I think everyone expects if Joe Burrow stays healthy and those receivers stay healthy, that team is going to score. The question is, are they going to be able to stop anyone? And can they specifically stop the Ravens? That's going to be interesting to see, because, like I said, it's one thing to try to counteract Lamar Jackson as a passer. Now you've also got to worry about him as a runner. You got to worry about Derrick Henry as a runner. And the Ravens just have a lot of ways to beat you. And I think the Cincinnati Bengals are going to have to figure things out on defense to match that. And yeah, on paper, it looks like the Ravens are going to be the most complete roster. It will be interesting to see, right? I think that's the chatter about Cincinnati is, can their defense do it? Their offense, I don't think has any questions in terms of they'll be able to score. But are they going to be able to consistently win 40-33, or are they going to actually hold people under 20 points once in a while? And I don't know if they will.
The Pittsburgh Steelers have the opposite issue. They have most of a good team, but the quarterback play has been a big question mark. And everybody says back to Roethlisberger, and I think it's kind of a question mark the last couple of years of Roethlisberger. He was, like most players do, he wasn't at the end what he was in his prime. So it's been quite a run here since they've had good quarterback play, and it's also been quite a run here since they won a playoff game. I think those two things go hand in hand. Do you see it the same way?
I mean, yeah, that's the rivalry, right? The Ravens and the Steelers is, I know a lot of people think the edge is off that rivalry with guys like Hines Ward and Ray Lewis and Terrell Suggs and Ben Roethlisberger no longer there. But believe me, this is still a huge rivalry in this area. And the Ravens have a saying that you're not really a Raven until you've beaten the Steelers. And the Steelers had won like 6 or 7 in a row against them until last year when the Ravens beat them and then beat them again in the playoffs. They had Russell Wilson last year. Now it's Aaron Rodgers, and it's going to be interesting to see whether Aaron Rodgers, what he can do there at this point. I think DK Metcalf's a good addition to them. Mike Tomlin and John Harbaugh have butted heads for years, and the games always end up, it seems, coming down to one score here or there. I expect it will be that way again. I think Rodgers is going to be a fascinating case study this year. I'm not sold that they're going to produce with Aaron Rodgers. If they do, I'll be gladly shown to be wrong. But that team can also win with its defense, with the guys they have in there. And the Ravens, Tomlin has had Harbaugh's number more than once. So I fully expect those games to be battles again. That's just how these two teams operate. But Rodgers, he's obviously one of the stories of the year. Can he turn around the Steelers and get them to the playoffs and then, again, win a game? I don't know. I don't know. He's not the old Aaron Rodgers. We know that much. I'm curious to see how DK Metcalf fits there because I think he's going to be a handful for them. But can they have the running game, and can they? Will Rodgers do it? Again, it comes down to, like I said, I think if you dice all the positions in the division, the Ravens have the most complete. That doesn't mean they're going to roll through this division by any stretch because, like I said, Tomlin seems to have Harbaugh's number at least once a year. And I expect those games to be great games again.
Bo Smolka, Ravens beat writer for Press Box, joined us. One of the other great rivalries in the division for a while was the Ravens and the Browns, because, of course, the Ravens used to be the Browns. And so when they would go back to Cleveland, it'd get everyone all stirred up. But Cleveland's been so bad for so long. I don't know if there's any heat there and if you expect anything out of Cleveland coming off a 3-win season.
Well, one of the wins was against Baltimore. They have to figure out what they're doing. I think the feeling is, I think the whole Browns-Ravens rivalry, because they're the old team, has kind of faded away over time. Mm-hmm. I don't think a lot of the fans feel that way anymore. But they've had a couple of big games recently. I mean, they had a playoff game, or a couple of years ago, C.J. Mosley had a big interception against Baker Mayfield. And there's been some big games. And, of course, the Browns have, like I said, they've tripped up the Ravens a few times. There's definitely some animosity, especially among the older fans. Fans here would love to see Joe Flacco play for the Browns. I mean, he was a great story when he was there before. Of course, they got like 1,000 quarterbacks there right now trying to figure out what's going on. And so that will be interesting to watch. Does Sanders become a factor? Is Flacco a factor? But again, John Harbaugh likes to say winning games is hard in the NFL, and the Browns have shown they have every ability to trip up this Ravens team if they're not taken seriously. It happened last year. It's happened other years. So there's just no freebies in this AFC North. There just aren't. You go to Cleveland, it's freezing, it's raining, whatever it might be, till they build a new stadium, that is.
Right.
But on paper they're not the same as these other teams, but screwy things happen in this division.
Tons of people play fantasy football. You got any breakout stars? You got any rookies who are going to come in and have an impact that people care about? And who knows, they could change one of these wacky games you're talking about. You got any impact players?
I mean, the Ravens have, their impact guys early in the draft this year. They drafted another first-round safety. They've pounded the defense, and again, it might come back to what you mentioned. Are you building your roster to counteract the other teams? They have now, after signing Jair Alexander, and they drafted Malachi Starks, a safety from Georgia. They have the potential to line up with 5 number one first-round draft picks in their secondary between Humphrey, who's probably going to be a slot guy, Alexander and Nate Wiggins, their top draft pick last year on the outside of corner, and Malachi Starks and Kyle Hamilton as safety. All of those guys are first-round draft picks. So that secondary is loaded. In terms of breakout, so Malachi Starks is a guy I think will start right away. As a fantasy guy, I mean, maybe it's not really the same, but Isaiah Likely is the tight end, the guy a lot of people are talking about. The thing is, as long as Mark Andrews is here, Isaiah Likely's production is probably going to be muted because they play both of them and they kind of each take away targets from the other, but they're both really productive. And then the running game is going to be Derrick Henry, Justice Hill. Keaton Mitchell's a guy to watch, but I think that's more – he's the number 3 running back. Tore his ACL midway through his rookie year 2 years ago, missed almost all of last year. He's back and at full speed. He's a quick guy, change of pace guy. He'll probably be in some, but I think he's more likely to make an impact on kick returns. But he's a guy that, if you talk about an X factor in a game that no one's expecting to make a difference in a close game, Keaton Mitchell on like a 44-yard run on his only carry of the game is completely conceivable.
Finally, we've been keeping this to the AFC North. That's your area of expertise. You're covering the Ravens, but everybody's got an eye on the Chiefs, and they played a lot of one-score games. It looked like they were slipping. It looked like they could always be beat. And then you look up at the end of the year, and they're 15-2, and they did get beat in the Super Bowl. They're so vulnerable. What's wrong with them? Do you think this is the year someone in the AFC can take them down, or do you think they're going to be in the AFC title again, playing for the Super Bowl again?
To me, it's theirs until someone takes it from them. And the Ravens played them in Week 1 last year, and they were an Isaiah Likely big toe from scoring at the end of the game. He was out of the end zone by an inch. And then the Ravens lost the next week to the Raiders on a game they never should have lost. But the Chiefs you got to give them credit. It is hard. It is hard to say consistently stay on top in this league. And it's theirs until someone takes it away. I think the Ravens are positioned to do it. But again, they were positioned to do it 2 years ago with the conference championship game at home here in Baltimore. And they kind of laid an egg. They held the Chiefs scoreless in the second half of that game, but couldn't produce. Again, a couple of key turnovers in that game. So I think the thing about the Chiefs, Andy Reid and Patrick Mahomes, the biggest contrast between them and the Ravens that I've seen is in those biggest moments, the Chiefs execute much better. And, Mahomes has just been an assassin in big games, last year's Super Bowl notwithstanding. And so it seems he plays his best in the biggest spots. And you can't say the Ravens have done that. They're going to have to do that if they're going to get by the Chiefs. And that's something they haven't been able to do. So to me, it's the Chiefs until someone takes it away from them. And the Ravens are going to have to take it away from them because the Chiefs are not, we've seen it, the Chiefs are not going to give it away. And so it's going to have to be taken by the Ravens or the Bills or whoever. You're going to have to be at your best to beat them.
Bo, we appreciate the time and all the football talk to get us ready for the start of the season. You're the man. Thank you very much.
All right, thanks. Good talking to you. Have a good day.
All right, you too. Bo Smolka, Ravens beat writer for the Press Box, talking about the AFC North. Cleveland's a mess. They got too far to go. Pittsburgh, you just can't buy Rodgers. I don't know what's going to happen, but something always happens. He'll say something. He'll do something. Maybe he'll get hurt again. Cincinnati doesn't seem to have the defense. I mean, is there a team you're more confident of winning their division than the Ravens? Yeah, the Bills, because that division's even worse. Even worse.
The hard thing with that division, though, like he was saying, it seems like they kind of just cannibalize each other. Everybody splits every series.
Rivalries are awesome, and they're harder to come by in pro sports than they are in college sports, but this division has them. And there are others. I think the NFC East has them. I don't think there's any question about that. I think the NFC North has them. But the AFC North, I don't know if I want to say underrated rivalries. I think people know Baltimore and Pittsburgh's a big deal. You hear players talk. It's not how pros usually talk. You rarely see that in basketball. Star players have a rivalry. And so while they're up, Cleveland versus Golden State's a big deal. But, after 4 years of them meeting in the finals, it's just another game on the schedule now. Dodgers, Giants, Yankees, Red Sox, Cubs, Cardinals, there's a few. I mean, baseball plays interleague games and went to that. It was a huge change for the traditionalists, but they did it because they wanted the rivalries, and they wanted to cash in on those. You get a couple teams in the same city or in the same state. And the NFL, they do so many things well, and that's one thing they do well. And the fact that they play twice every year gives teams where you think, well, why would there be a rivalry there? Well, they play twice a year, and you start taking something away from somebody else, and it heats it up. It gets it going. All right, DJ and PK, it's 97.5 The Zone. When we come back, everything you missed in this show. Ranking the NBA front offices. ESPN did something on that. ESPN ranking college quarterbacks. Interesting stuff about the Jazz, Cougars, Utes, and Aggies. We'll get to that coming up and recap some of the interviews you missed. Stay with us right here on The Zone.
For all of you less motivated listeners, it's time for your 9 o'clock. Where the heck have you been headlines?
Where you at?
With DJ and PK on 97.5, the KSL Sports Zone.
All right, it's time for the Slacker headlines. Brought to you by Trajan Wealth. Today, visit your local trusted financial fiduciary, 801-899-7600, or visit their website at trajanwealth.com. Sorry for that delay. 40-year-old joke on my phone here, sorry, as it came back. Christian, have you ever heard PK say I'm a different person on the air than I am off the air?
Well, everybody is.
To a degree, you're right, because they call it a show, right? So you take different parts of your personality and they get amplified, get a little more intense. I went to college with Jim Rome. He was a year behind me in school. And he was sarcastic in person, but he was way more sarcastic on the air. He was quick in person, right? And you see that on the air all the time. But it's basically his personality, but it's just a way more intense version of his personality. And the one thing I try not to do is go at listeners, because what did they do to me, right? But I do have a little bit of my personality. I think that's the one thing you don't see on the air. So did you see, you were playing the music. It's so funny that this, sometimes like, worlds collide, Jerry, worlds collide. So you're playing Ozzy Osbourne, and I have a group of college friends texting. One of them sent out Donny Osmond on Instagram, remembering my brother in music, Ozzy Osbourne, right? Now I'm sitting here in Utah, where Donny Osmond's a huge name. And this one guy, Ken, I mean, who doesn't think of Ozzy when they think of Donny? And then they mention somebody else, and they talk about how they think of me. And it's a woman who was at our radio station when I was in college. And she said, in a fight for a program committee meeting, a fight for airtime, we had an FM signal that went to 3 counties, right? We had an AM signal that was carrier current to the dorms. Technology at the time, this doesn't sound like out of the Stone Age to you, but if you plugged your radio into the wall, the signal was in the carrier current, and you could listen in the dorms. Now, how many people were doing that, do you think? You were doing
Probably not a lot.
Yeah, you were doing radio. There were probably about, 3,000 kids in the dorms. And so you were doing radio for at most 5 of them, and you probably knew 2 of them.
Right.
Right?
Yeah, they're your friends.
So this woman named Sylvia is, hey, why don't we put sport? And there's not enough. There's people who want shows and time. She says, well, why don't we put sports on the AM? Thinking, well, sports are for students. The students were all in the dorms. The station was a mix of people from the community, sort of NPRs, but not really, sort of, kind of, and then students. And I was the program director, and obviously coming out of the sports department. And I looked at her, and this means, oh, why don't we put your show on the AM? And that ended that discussion. That ended that discussion. And after the meeting, it was like, whoa, why can't I mention putting her show on the AM? She mentioned putting my show on the AM. Why is what she's doing rational and what I'm doing mean? I don't get that. We literally said the same thing, saying it's apart. But anyway, on the bottom here is why don't we put your show on the AM? You're playing Ozzy Osbourne. They're texting about Donny Osmond and Ozzy Osbourne. I don't know. It all came together. And PK saying you're different off the air. And it's like, yeah, that's the kind of thing that I don't really have an opportunity to say on the air very often. I might at some point and all that. But yeah, it's like decades later. People, hey, remember when you? Funny the way life and worlds collide. Right there. All right, what'd you miss in today's show? If you got here a little late, if you go back and listen to the 7 o'clock hour, 'tis the season for lists. At the start of a season and the end of the season. Well, we're at the end of the NBA here. The NBA year is going to take a little break here for a couple months. And we're at the start of the college football season. And we've got lists for both. ESPN did do an interesting list. And people, we got all these comments. I'll get to them in the next segment. What does ESPN know? ESPN compliments the Jazz and takes heat from people. They list the teams that made, and they put tier 5, small scale problems, and they put the Jazz on there. The biggest mistake not trading Lauri Markkanen. He had more value 2 years ago. He was playing at our all-star level. He wasn't making as much money. Now he's making more money, but his production's dropped off. He only played 47 games. I think they're extenuating circumstances. While it might be true that he can't handle a pounding of an 82-game NBA season, he sat last year because they were tanking games. Now, maybe they'll try to play him 82 this year. I don't even know if he'll be in Utah for all 82. Maybe he'll get traded at some point during the season. Who knows what Austin Ainge is going to do? I don't think anybody knows. So I think they're right about that criticism. And when they rank at 26th and put you in tier 5, it's like, well, they're going to say something critical of all 30 teams, and this is pretty light. I think, honestly, the Jazz are taking more heat locally for this than they are nationally. And it's not just Lowry, it's all the veterans. They got moved 2 years too late. 2 years ago, the Jazz thought, if we hold on, we can get a little more. Turns out they held on and got a little less. The new CBA rules from the new collective bargaining agreement kick in. The new TV money hasn't kicked in. It has been hard to move veterans with money on their contract. The veterans who do move, ironically, have been older than the Jazz guys in most cases, and have had bigger reputations but have not been as good of players, have been making a ton of money, and have jammed up their teams. And when you look at the list, the teams that really get criticized, that go in that top tier, franchise-altering terrible trades. Now the criticism is flowing. Well, yeah, it's the Nets trading for James Harden. How did that work out? The Bucks for Damian Lillard, the Suns for Durant and Bradley Beal, and Dallas trading Luka Doncic. Now, Luka's in his prime, but you got three other teams that traded for older guys past their prime, and it didn't come. Not only did it not work, it didn't come close to working. The Bucks didn't win a playoff series. Phoenix fell from the NBA Finals to the lottery and is blowing things up and buying Beal out and trading Durant. So, very light. The Jazz 26th on that list. The Jazz got off easier than the Celtics and the Thunder, both won championships. But along the way, the Celtics traded Desmond Bane. He would have fit.
For kicks and giggles, who's below the Jazz? Who's 27 through 30?
Oh, the teams. Cleveland came in 30. They got off the easiest. The biggest mistake, declining Isaiah Hartenstein's qualifying offer. They could have had him. He's in Oklahoma City playing great. Qualifying offer. Coulda, woulda, shoulda. Didn't hold on to him. But, they got Mobley. They're like, well, how many guys do we want to pay who, replicate the skill set and all that? Well, he's good enough. You want to pay him. So that was their mistake. Indiana with a coaching hire. The Knicks signing Fortier. Portland re-signing Jeremy Grant. So, along with the Jazz, those are the 5 teams that got off the easiest. Actually, Charlotte was next on the list, 25th, signing Gordon Hayward for 4 years and $120 million. I'm surprised Charlotte, for all their losing, didn't get criticized more. But the thing is, they're looking for the biggest mistake, and so that's the premise. Whereas with Charlotte, it's the fact there have been 100 mistakes. Boston made a big mistake trading Desmond Bane, but Boston also made 99 really good decisions, and everybody's going to miss on one. So the one mistake is worse, but the cumulative effect, completely different. I mean, Charlotte and Boston have been living on different ends of the NBA standings for a long time now. Even the Thunder, they traded 4 future rotation players after the draft in 2020-21. Sam Presti makes a lot of trades. He's bound to miss on some of them. Brilliant draft picks, brilliant trade for SGA, so it counteracts the fact that traded away an all-star center, all defensive wing, and 2 quality guards, and didn't really get much back. So there's been a lot of talent going through Oklahoma City. They've held on to a lot of it. See, but that's a classic example of what PK always says is it doesn't matter who you don't have. It matters who you do have. Yes, these other guys could have played in Boston and Oklahoma City, but they made so many good decisions. They got their 7, 8, 9 guys and their star at the top, and they go out and they win their championship. The other list was a list of quarterbacks, 1 through 136. Now, the NBA list is looking back, and there's always a little subjectivity, looking forward on young players and how they're going to develop, especially a quarterback. Good luck with that. But the Athletic, nonetheless, threw themselves into the mix here and ranked everybody 1 through 136. I prefer to look at this kind of in tiers as well, because how can you really tell, especially in a team game with play callers also figuring in and 10 of the guys on the field, and do they do their job, and that impacts how good you look. We were talking earlier about 4,000 quarterbacks throwing 4,000 yards because Caleb Williams had a bite that he wants to be the first Bears quarterback to ever do that. Well, if he does that, then the Bears have to have a better season, right? I mean, it couldn't be worse. So, yeah, it's a selfish individual stat, but it's one that's going to carry your team to more wins. There's so much room for Chicago to grow. There were 6 players in the NFL last year who threw for 4,000 yards, and Patrick Mahomes is not one of them because of drops. He came up like 72 yards short, and they had drops, multiple drops, game after game. He should have easily been over 4,000 yards. If the other players can have an impact on Patrick Mahomes, they can have an impact on anybody else. The bigger trend in this matches up what we've been talking about here for a month now, and it was a big storyline at the Big 12 Media Days. Big 12 football is loaded with good quarterbacks, and the Athletic ranks them, and 7 of the top 25 are in the Big 12. 7. That is very impressive, which makes me think there could be a lot of winning, which makes me think if you could win some big non-conference games, you could set your team up, your teams up in the rankings, so when they start playing each other, you get what the SEC has had for years. You don't get hurt for a loss, but you do get helped by a win. We'll see if these quarterbacks can lead their teams to big non-conference wins. Number 25, the 7th-ranked Big 12 quarterback is Devin Dampier. And as The Athletic does when they do these kind of lists, they love to get a few people to talk and get them to talk anonymously. A P4 general manager, the quote on Devin Dampier, he's a magician back there. Really slippery. Has a good feel for it. Throws it better than you think. Okay, we don't think he throws it that great because his completion percentage was 58%. You got to get to 60. You want to get to 65. 60 is kind of a C, 65 is a B, and if you get to 70, you're getting the A+. And just as importantly, that touchdown interception ratio, and it was 12-12. Now, you got to factor in the fact that he runs the ball really well, and he runs the ball well in the red zone. He scores a lot of touchdowns. So that's why, with some fairly pedestrian passing numbers, he's up at number 25 and number 7 in the conference. But Kyle Whittingham is absolutely going to preach cut down on the interceptions. Get him down to 6. 1 every other game, you can live with that. 12, that's a lot. Now, the other quarterbacks in the state didn't fare well. The next one up is Bryson Barnes, and he's at 92. And this surprises me. I thought he'd be around 60, 70, something like that. He led the Utes to an 8-5 season. As a starting quarterback in a Power 5 league, they were pretty good. Now, he did have, a good team around him. It's not like he did it by himself. But who was that running for a big gain across midfield and setting up the game-winning field goal at USC? It's Bryson Barnes. And just as you should factor in the rushing yardage into the passing stats when you figure out where you're going to rank these quarterbacks, and they clearly did it with Devin Dampier because in his passing numbers he would have never gotten to 25. Clearly they're taking his ability to run the ball into account. But Bryson Barnes ought to get the same thing. And they know it. They mention it in the paragraph they write on him. They ran for 185 yards against a good Colorado State team and 193 yards against a bad San Diego State team. San Diego State only had 3 wins last year. It was a bad season. But nonetheless, those are staggering numbers. Those are massive. Now, his completion percentage, 61%, his touchdown interception ratio, 12-6. That's not great. And they're gonna rank the G5 quarterbacks lower. And those numbers don't really jump out at you. And he was a part-time starter a year ago. Started early, really didn't have very good numbers playing Utah and USC. And it had another game early on. Might have been Robert Morris. And then he had really good numbers when he got to play conference games at the end of the year, and he didn't play in the middle of the season. But I thought he was really good at the end of the year. It was 8 touchdowns to 2 picks in 2 games and a little. He didn't play a lot against Hawaii. He played a couple series, I think. And then he played 2 full games at the end of the year against San Diego State and CSU. But he showed he can run the ball in the brief time he played in the Rose Bowl, threw a touchdown pass there. I thought Bryson Barnes would do a little better than that. I'm surprised they dropped him down at 92. We had Hans Olsen on yesterday, and if you haven't heard that interview, go listen to Hans. And I asked him, who at the Mountain West Conference Media Day was walking around like they knew something everybody else didn't? Who really had the strut and had that, this is going to be good? And he didn't misspeak. He goes, Bronco Mendenhall. He loves Bryson Barnes. And that caught my ear right away, because Bronco, like a lot of our coaches here, is a defensive guy. Kalani's a defensive guy. Kyle's a defensive guy. But you have to defend the other side of the ball. You know the quarterback you don't want to defend. And Bronco knows the quarterback he doesn't want to defend, Bryson Barnes. And Hans believes that reading between the lines on Bronco's demeanor and knowing how Bronco generally talks about people, that he really thinks he has something in Bryson Barnes. And I'm surprised Bryson wasn't 20 spots higher. I wonder what they do with BYU, because they picked somebody for every school, even schools where there's quarterback battles like Tulane and BYU. They did not, at Tulane, they didn't pick Jack Retzlaff. They had somebody else. They did pick McKay Hillstead to be the starter at BYU. And they referenced Retzlaff's departure and the fact that Hillstead played at Utah State and that Trayshawn Bourrier played at Western Michigan. They kind of dismissed Bachmeier because he's a true freshman and he wasn't here for spring ball. And I get it. I still think there's optimism around him, and PK has said that. He's talked to people, and there's optimism around him. And when PK says that, he's not making stuff up. PK talks to so many people in these programs. I know him, and I don't ask him because I don't want to know who his source is, but I've just seen him interact with enough people. I'm like, it could be that person, it could be that person, it could be that person. If he gets along with all the head coaches, all the coordinators, and some of the position coaches, I don't know where he's getting stuff. beats me. But I know he's getting it from somewhere. And I think inside the program, there's a lot of optimism about Bear Bachmeier. There's also questions. They don't know for sure. They're going to have to put him in there, and I think he'll be able to make plays, but will he be able to avoid mistakes? Which I think is the thing for Hillstead. He played part-time 2 years ago at Utah State. And I remember watching those games. And I remember the game he got hurt in, which was the UConn game. And, he made some big plays in those games. He can make plays. It's about eliminating the mistakes. I don't have any doubt he's going to be able to find Chase downfield, and there's going to be big gains. I am sure that will happen. But is he taking sacks? Is he throwing picks? I don't know, and I think A-Rod's going to grade pretty heavily on that stuff, like most coordinators do when they start trying to weigh these three quarterbacks and who gets the starts. They put McKay Hillstead down at 99. That surprised me. That's way down. Is BYU's quarterback situation puts them at the bottom of the conference in quarterback situations. Their defense is supposed to be really good, and I think we all expect that. We'll see what happens with the quarterback. We'll see if it even is McKay. But he was down in Tier 6 with Bryson, whereas meanwhile they had Devin Dampier up in Tier 3. So, and in the top 10, ASU and TCU, their quarterback situations got a lot of praise for those two schools. So, all right, DJ and PK, that's what we've been talking about. If you want to talk AFC North football, get a little NFL, Bo Smolka, wherever you get your podcast. He joined us, beat writer covering the Ravens. Gary Smith, Tulane. What a wild ride. Four crazy years for Tulane. Hurricane-ruined season, win a Cotton Bowl, go to 2 more AAC title games. Quarterback transfers out. Quarterback who comes in to replace him has to transfer out with legal issues. 4 more quarterbacks in, including Jake Retzlaff competing for a job. Crazy deal. Gary Smith was really good. And we had Travis Hansen on talking about his new role at BYU, where the rules around NIL have been loosened up just in the 48 hours since Travis got hired. So what is he going to do exactly? Well, tell me what the rules are, and then we'll know for sure. But managing the money, the assets, and adjusting to whatever the next change is, working with coaches, both Olympic and football, Kalani Sitake and Diljit Taylor, who coaches the women's cross-country program, and they're elite. National championships, runners-up, the whole bit. So it'll be interesting to see where this all goes with Travis as his job just shape-shifts going forward based on however college football changes next. We're going to take a break. When we come back, your feedback next. Stay with us.
And now, enough of us. It's time to hear from you. From all your texts, tweets, and posts. This is the best feedback of the day.
Ooh, I was there. That's the best game of my life.
With DJ and PK on 97.5, the KSL Sports Zone.
Do you do that just to mess with me, Christian?
Yeah.
She says, read Bar W Beef, Hans and Scotty. I'm like, join Hans and Scotty wins. He goes, hold on, I have to turn your microphone on. Why are you telling me to read stuff when my mic isn't on?
Well,
just push the button, wind me up, and I go. All right, join Hans and Scotty Wednesday at the Bar W Beef pop-up event at the IFA in Spanish Fork from noon till 3 p.m. This is your chance to stock up for those summer barbecues with the premium Bar W Beef meats. See you at the IFA in Spanish Fork for the Bar W Beef special pop-up sale. All right, it's time for your feedback, all the stuff you think about the stuff we've had to say. Brandon at Basin Brandon, I dare say, not trading Lowry is one of the few things the Jazz front office has done right over the past few years. Well, Brandon, maybe not. I know what you're thinking. I got to say, a couple of years ago, I didn't think they should trade him. I thought he was a pretty good player. He had size. He could shoot the ball. Seemed to want to be here, which has been a problem at times. So what the heck? I mean, if you trade him, you just have to go find another him. But what's happened is the guys in his age range, they couldn't acquire them. They couldn't get the right deal, the right fit. And so now they've gone young. I think they're going to have to trade him. And are they going to get maximum value for him? And my guess is they would have gotten more value 2 years ago. I mean, that's a hypothetical. We don't know exactly what the value would have been, so it's hard to really assess it. But it seems like he was red hot 2 years ago, and he's making less money. And he only played 47 games last year, so maybe he bounces back, has a big year, and his trade value comes back. And I do think, as much as you've seen the trade market really frozen, locked up, tightened up here the last couple of years, the TV money's going to kick in. The salary cap's going to go up 10% every year. and teams are going to have a little more room. Some of the bigger deals, of course, will come to an end. That'll open some things up. So I think there will be a little more space. 11-2 and highly ranked. ESPN sucks at pretty much all analysis. They're just there for large market teams. Kathy, the retired librarian, what does ESPN know? ESPN was actually pretty complimentary in this list. They put them in the, five. I mean, they were critical of one move that every team made, but they ranked them, and they're ranked 26. So they're like 5 or 6 teams they really let off the hook in the lowest tier, and the Jazz were one of them. So 11-2 highly ranked. ESPN sucks. All right. Criticize the Jazz more. That'll make Jazz fans happy. Maybe right now it would. There's some pretty frustrated Jazz fans after 3 years out of the playoffs. Yeah, the ESPN.com isn't there for large market teams in the same way the TV is. I mean, they are. There's still more clicks in the Lakers and the Knicks. But if I look at ESPN right now, Ben Johnson sets goal for Caleb Williams. Yeah, they're talking Chicago. Stick with the big markets. Marty McFly says, I don't know if Cody Williams and Hendricks can come in and take a step in the right direction. Ace becomes what he looks like he can become. The nucleus of his team with Markkanen is pretty promising. I'm more enthusiastic now than I was 3 months ago, when I did think, where I did think Larry Markkanen should be. The age gap is still there. If you saw a little bit, I mean, we haven't seen anything of Hendricks yet. We still have no idea there. A little more optimistic about Ace. I think Ace in Summer League was largely who we were told he was going to be. He was going to be dynamic. He was picked 5. He was supposed to be better than the other rookies, and he was. Now, second-year guys, maybe that's a little different because there's so much progress being made there. But we were told he was a great athlete. His athleticism was on full display. He was doing stuff most guys can't do. But Summer League is one thing and the NBA regular season another, so hold on. Cody Williams looked a little better. Still a long way to go, Marty. Long way to go. We got more people weighing in on this. Play the man. Terrell is sick of seeing Lowry sit. Well, we're all with you there, Terrell. And I think he will play this year. They're going to have to play him if they're going to increase his trade value. If they want to keep him and win, they need to play him. If they want to trade him, they need to play him. Either way, they're going to need to play him. So I think you'll see a lot more of Larry Markkanen this year. All right, DJ and PK, we're out of time. Jake and Ben are coming up next right here on The Zone.